And then there were some people who teased me for my accent at that time too. I don't know. And I was like, I'm gonna rap. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, why not? I went to Edinburgh because Edinburgh is a great university. At that point, I wanted to do like accounting, business, get that business knowledge.
All your life, majority of your life in the Western world.
Yeah.
But you still see Ukraine as your first home. Ukraine versus Canada, biggest differences?
I mean, huge differences, very different countries, mentality.
Ukrainian, Canadian, British, or something in between?
I say Ukrainian, Canadian more.
Welcome to Identity Talks, episode 2. Today's guest, I have a question for later. Easy way to remember him is Q4L. Let me ask the energy. Let me start off today just to introduce this episode for you, for everyone. Today I'm sitting down with a man who has lived for 4 different lives. Born in Ukraine, raised in Toronto, shaped in Scotland, and hardened in London. Most people migrate once. He had to rebuild himself 4 times. He's known as Question for Later, Q4L, an artist who turned pressure, identity, homesickness, and an immigrant chokehold into music and film. I want to ask, you were born in Ukraine. What pieces of identity stayed with you today? I know you were born in Ukraine. So let me kind of rephrase that back. Tell me a little your life in the Ukraine. And then once you've done with Ukraine, when was it the time that you guys decided, or your family decided for you to migrate to Canada, and why? Yeah,
so I grew up in Ukraine until I was 11. And it was a decent life. It was the wild 90s. I don't know if you know the history.
Yes.
And my dad was doing business, things like that. So it was an interesting time. Obviously, I was a little kid, but I was growing up, taking everything in, and everything from that time still stayed with me. Obviously, maybe some memories, you're a kid, you don't remember, but a lot of like the values, struggles, even things you superstitions or things you may be worried about have stuck with me, like I, for some reason, back from those times, I would never want to live on like a first floor or a ground floor flat because, in Ukraine, 90s, people would like climb through the window and steal something. But that was the 90s.
Were you living in a house? Were you living in flats?
I was living in flats, yeah, back then, yes.
Where are you from? Where are you from?
Kiev.
You're from Kiev, so capital city.
Yeah, I was born there, so yeah. A lot of people in Kiev now actually were born somewhere else, but yeah, I was born in Kiev. And then around 11 years old, we moved to Canada.
Wait. Before you moved to Canada, whose decision was it to move to Canada and why?
It was my parents, just better opportunities. They knew some friends there and, they were, I think, worried a bit about what's going on in Ukraine. And yeah, we decided to move.
So you're 11 years old, your parents are moving to Canada with you.
Yeah.
Where in Canada did you move to?
Toronto area.
So capital city again.
Well, actually, the capital of Canada is Ottawa. Yeah.
Something I didn't know.
Toronto is the biggest city.
Yeah. So you moved to Toronto at the age of 11. Toronto. What was your life there at first? What was it like for you?
Look, I listened to my parents. I was never like kind of like trusted their decision making and stuff. So I was just like excited. Like I was like, oh wow, this is like cool. Like North America. I went to US. Was that just like half a year before to visit a friend. That was like my first time going to North America. We went to Washington DC. So I had a bit of an impression of North America. So like moving to Canada, it was an interesting decision, but I was like excited. I was open-minded about it. Moving there, it was a different world. Everything's bigger, cars, roads, houses, food portions, everything.
So wait, you moved with your family and obviously you went to America as well, but what was it? Okay, seeing how big it is and so forth, how did you feel? Did you feel like you're an immigrant down there? How did you feel? What was that reaction down there?
So, look, I did feel a bit of like immigrant. At the same time, like we were doing all right. Like my parents saved some money. They had some, because my dad done business and stuff. So, they saved some money. And, but yeah, just like I started going to this normal school. And yeah, you did feel like an immigrant because like some people were really curious about you, especially coming from Ukraine. Like there's many Ukrainians in Canada, but I think the school I went to, there's none there, like from Ukraine. Maybe there's people who had like heritage, like the 3rd generation. And and yeah, so there was people. Some like, wow, like how's Ukraine? How's Europe? Just generally, some people never been to Europe. They just grew up in Canada. And then there were some people who teased me for my accent at that time too. Like I remember this kid. We kind of had a love-hate relationship, but he would like constantly flame me. Like I'll say something and I'll have like the word will have like the wrong accent, and he would like laugh and then say it. Yeah.
Question for you. Like, I want to know, did you when you were growing up, did you see yourself more, did you associate yourself more like a Ukrainian growing up in Canada, or did you see yourself more of a Eastern European growing up in Canada?
So this whole idea of Eastern Europe, I think I've only in like my adult life I started to cling to it, because well, although to be fair, I think in Canada as well, like if you saw people who were not Ukrainian, but let's say like very, very young, I met some Serbians and we were really connected. They were my neighbors. So shout outs to them. And we connected because like their grandma was constantly walking to the neighborhood and she heard my parents speak, but it wasn't obviously Serbian. But then she's like, oh, it's a Slavic language. And she couldn't speak. She only spoke Serbians. But then she got her grandkids who were around like my age. And then she introduced us. So yeah, we did. There was this kind of camaraderie. But this term Eastern European, I don't think it was as like big back then, or like, we would click to it. We just say we're Slavs, or we're from Europe, from eastern part of Europe. Like, but Eastern European is like a brand.
Yeah.
I didn't feel it was. It came to mainstream yet.
Cool. So let me. I want to.
Until now.
I find it interesting. Yeah. So you were growing up in Canada, even though Canada has a big diaspora of Ukrainians and other nationalities. Yeah. You said the word Slavs. You didn't see more Eastern Europe. How did people perceive, let's say, Slavs or Eastern Europeans then, or even yourself? How did they perceive you?
So it's interesting because like there's many Ukrainians who were in Canada I met. Like there was ones who moved in like the maybe like early 90s, and so they had this like they moved there. They still a lot of them actually, like they were Ukrainian, but they loved Soviet Union. They kind of like, even me back then, like Russia, I felt like was a brotherly nation. I would speak Russian, although I always identified as a Ukrainian. But some of those immigrants who came a bit earlier, they kind of, it was like the same thing for them, but they also had this view that everything is like really bad back home. But they're the ones who moved maybe like 90s, 80s, and it was like maybe their kids just growing up. And then there were immigrants who, not immigrants, but like they're like third generation Ukrainians. Like, their ancestors moved in the 30s, and there was like a big migration. So they were really Canadian, and they really like loved their Ukrainian heritage, but it was very like they might do Ukrainian dancing, Ukrainian music and stuff, but they spoke Ukrainian with like this very American accent or Canadian accent. There was this actually creator in Ukraine called Michael Schur. If you don't know, he's very famous. I think he's actually serving in the army right now. But in Ukraine, a couple of years ago, he started the show pretending to be a Ukrainian from Toronto. But he's actually from Lviv, and he mimicked this accent. And I was like, that's the accent that those Ukrainians who grew up and they're like third generation, second generation would speak. And they're really nice people. They really clung to their roots, but they were their mentality was a bit different. They didn't understand some nuances. They were very westernized.
Let me. I wanna interject more. When did your passion for music started? Was it something that you started from Ukraine, or was it developed in Canada?
So I think it really formed in Canada, but I feel it started up like the foundations just before I moved to Canada. So a couple of years before, we got these channels of like music videos, and it was like all sorts of music, Ukrainian music, Russian music, and a lot of American music, like Bow Wow, Eminem, like stuff like that. And I already started listening to that. And I remember just before I moved to Canada, I decided to write in my notebook. I was like 11 or 10 years old, to write like some lyrics. I don't know why, but I was like, and that's before 8 Mile, because 8 Mile was just a year later. So yeah, I just decided to do that. And then when I came to Canada, I kind of was I was just curious. 50 Cent just dropped around. So I moved there 2022. So yeah, around 50 Cent just dropped there. Eminem was huge. G Unit, like The Game, all that. So it was all very inspiring. But I also even listened to other music. I was listening to like Billy Talent and Sum 41, but yeah, like rap, and then this was like a big moment. And I remember it is in my first year in middle school when I was in Canada, we had a talent show, and they had a teacher go around each class and be like, does anybody want to participate in the talent show? And I was like, oh, well, what's that? It's like, oh, anyone can go up and do something in front of the whole school. And there were people doing like taekwondo chops, belly dancing. Like that was like, there's like a few people actually did they were doing the taekwondo demonstration. Someone did belly dancing. Someone did, I don't know. And I was like, I'm going to rap. And they're like, what? I was like, yeah, why not?
So you rapped in English?
Yeah, in front of the whole school. It was a small school. It was like, I don't know, 200 people, 300 people.
So I find it interesting. Were you listening to rap in Ukraine before you turned?
Yeah.
So what kind of music were you listening to? You listen to Ukrainian rap, Russian rap, what kind of English rap as well?
I would say mostly English, because I think at that point Ukrainian rap wasn't really mature. There was I don't even remember like the only one I can remember is like Tartak, but they're kind of rock rap. And Tanok na Madani Kongo. But even them, I only knew a few of their songs. So there wasn't like really much Ukrainian rap. And I wasn't really exposed to Russian rap as well. So I was more Eminem, Bow Wow. I remember he was actually Low Bow Wow back then. Yeah.
So you moved to Canada, you're doing rap, you're growing down there. And then when did so you turned 17, this is when you decided to study in Europe, which is Scotland. Right?
Yeah. So once I did my schooling, I was wondering where I want to go, and obviously, I wanted to go to a good university. Well, I was still thinking about music, but I always think like the music was always there, but I always wanted to like carve the right path. You got to do the right steps. So I wanted to go to a university either in Toronto. For some reason, I didn't want to go anywhere else in Canada. I just either I'm going to Toronto or there I'm going US, and then UK as well, because UK is great, has great institutions, great universities. US was good, but it's like you have to do SATs, and the fees there are quite large, especially if you're out of state. I was out of the country, right? I wasn't even American, so. Mining, being in that state, the fees would be quite large. But anyways, I applied everywhere, and then I, looking at the different applications and offers that I got, and I went to Edinburgh, because Edinburgh is a great university. At that point, I wanted to do like accounting, business, get that business knowledge.
So you came to Scotland despite like you got Canada, America. You grew up majority of your life down there, despite having opportunities to go to America to study and Canada. Obviously, I understand maybe some of the reasons you didn't want to choose is because, like you said, the fees were quite expensive, so forth. But then again, you went to Scotland, studied there. Can I just ask you? You studied in Scotland University. When you came back to Europe? Mm-hmm. When you were living in Canada, did you travel to Europe beforehand, or did you
So yeah, good question. I always kept close to my Ukrainian roots. So like a lot of the summer holidays, Christmas holidays, I went back to Ukraine with my parents. And my parents, to be fair, I have to admit, they didn't stay that long in Canada, because they really missed, they missed Ukraine, because they had, they kind of thought it was a great opportunity, but they also had a pretty good kind of community in Ukraine and Kiev, and yeah.
It's a bit different for your parents, because your parents kind of left Ukraine when they were in the adulthood. Yeah. You obviously left when you were still more like a child, and now you went to Canada. Your golden age is practically Canada, no?
My teenage years, if you say that's the golden age. But I guess that's what forms you. That's why I speak the way I speak. That's why I was able to kind of take in some of the Western, qualities and, niceties and, how you speak and things like that. Even though I kind of grew up in a Ukrainian family, I always went back, as much as I could for holidays or for the Christmas. Because I didn't have any. It was just us. There was no. All the family was back home. All the friends. Yeah.
Very similar to me as well. It's just I find it.
Did you go back every summer, Christmas? Yeah.
Yeah. Once we got the documents, I traveled back home,
Yeah.
and it was for me, it was very different because I came to UK when I was 7 years old.
Yeah.
And then when I came back, it was like 7 years went by, and when I went back to Ukraine, it was a shock. Because I remember the time when I went back to Ukraine, I remember obviously you're from the city, I'm more from the village. I remember in village, Lavke, when people say at Lavke, they used to eat semushka, these sunflower seeds.
Yeah.
When I went there, they were still like that. And when I came to 2 times more, people didn't see it on Lavke no more because life for Ukrainians have changed. It became hard. But listen, from Ukraine, you went to...
I just want to mention that there's some people...
Go on.
What I felt like in Canada, and even maybe here, people who never go back, they have this view that like Ukraine got stuck in like when they left. And they think, and it's like, obviously the Western world has many opportunities and life is better, but actually, these countries have been developing.
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. Listen, I find it interesting now that now you're in Scotland studying.
Yeah.
Did you... Because it's Europe. Did you see yourself different, or other people saw you different? Because remember, you got that accent, and plus you got that Canadian accent as well.
Yeah. So actually, by the time I got to Scotland, I was sort of a hybrid. I was, if I wanted to say Ukrainian, they're like, "Well, why do you sound like that?" And I was like, "Oh, well, because I grew up in Toronto, in Canada, and if I say Canadian, but then sometimes I would speak, sometimes an accent would slip through, or I wouldn't necessarily move like a Canadian or a North American. So yeah, I guess I kind of was a hybrid of these two, and but it was cool to move because when I came to university, like my first days was the first time I've ever been to UK. I've never been to UK before. I just picked Edinburgh. Edinburgh seemed like a nice city, good university, and I knew someone who went there, and they said it's like really pretty, has like it's like a museum. I was like, that's sick, that's what I thought of UK. By the way, I only knew of Dizzy Rascal as well before I went to UK, so I didn't really think there was much rap, and I thought, oh, it's just people in tweed jackets and stuff. But then I came and I got acquainted with the culture, came to London, found out Kano. Shout outs to Dan who put me on, and he said there is rap, and I was like, whoa, this is serious. Yeah.
All right, so you move from Scotland, you moved to London. You moved to London. Was there a reason why you moved to London?
Well, London I moved like 5 years ago, just before COVID. It's just because I lived in Edinburgh for a while. I was working there, and then I always had this view, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'm going to move somewhere else. I was like, I'm not moving to London. I've been to London too many times. It's too expensive, too polluted, too crazy. And it's kind of like, it's still UK, it's not something. But then, I wanted new opportunities. And obviously I met a very special woman, and, she was in London. So I had to follow my heart. But also I realized actually London is a good shout because it is one of the capitals of the world, and the opportunities I was kind of seeking I could find here, from jobs to music, even like the whole music thing. I started it when I moved to London because I felt here it's like finally I could, there's so many different communities, different this, you can go to events, find your collaborators, just put it out. Edinburgh is a small place. If someone was in doing music or music rap, it's quite cliquey, it's quite small. So I felt it, it's a bit
While you were in Scotland, did you find people like yourself, Ukrainians or Eastern Europeans in Edinburgh? Did you find that community down there?
Yeah, in Edinburgh. So in Edinburgh has actually a Ukrainian society. They even have like a building. It's been like established like 70 years ago. So there were a few Ukrainians there. There was a few Ukrainians in university. There was a few Ukrainians obviously in that community. Also, like, to be fair, like I was friendly with Russians, with Latvians, like Russian speakers, especially, before the full-scale invasion. You kind of like were cool with people. Even after, the revolution in 2014 and the war that started in the East, I would be a bit more cautious with some. I would like, there are people I met who are Russian, and I was like, oh, sick, like, we can really connect, and we speak in Russian. And then I felt this kind of their imperialist view come through, or their view that like, oh, you Ukrainians, what are you doing? Why aren't you just listening to us and do what we tell you? And I would feel, like cut off ties. But yeah, it's very rare those people where, like, I think, especially if you move to the UK, you're a bit more open-minded.
When you think of home, what country comes to mind first?
Ukraine. Yeah. It's crazy because if you think about it now, I lived in the UK probably longer than I lived in Ukraine.
Yeah, because you lived all your life, majority of your life in the Western world.
Yeah.
But you still see Ukraine as your first home.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if we calculate also, like, there's many times I went there for, like...
On holidays,
holiday, like, I had whole summers, or even, like, had, like, periods between work and stuff, and I was in Ukraine and stuff, so, for a couple months. But, yeah, I think it's my home, but, yeah, I am at the same time mixed with, like, the Western roots.
Let me ask you this, because this is the question that if someone asks me... sometimes I don't even know what to answer.
Who are you?
Do you feel Ukrainian, Canadian, British, or something in between?
I would say, I say Ukrainian, Canadian more. I think British, even though I lived here for so long and I know the culture, but I think my formative years have been Ukraine and Canada. And like my Western culture came from Canada. And to be fair, Canada, UK, there's so many similarities. They were established, like, Canada was established by British and French and stuff, but by British a lot. And it's actually under the Commonwealth. There's the king and the, things like that. So there is like some cultural similarities but I would probably say Canadian just because of things I grew up on. But yeah, like I'm very UK based as well. I understand the local scene, the local accents, everything. I've been here long enough. It's just I don't sound like a Brit.
I like the fact that you said you see yourself more like Ukrainian Canadian, because the same for me. I see myself more of a Anglo-Ukrainian or British Ukrainian. There's kind of differences. Anglo-Ukrainian is that you were born here to family, parents of Ukrainian.
Yeah, I think.
And British Ukrainian is that you migrated here a very long time and you kind of raised here like myself. And your parents are Ukrainian, but you've been here a long time, so you call yourself British Ukrainian.
I thought it's different. I thought it's whatever word you put first. So if you're saying Anglo-Ukrainian, it means you were born here. If you're saying Ukrainian English, Ukrainian Brit, that means you moved here. The same thing, like if I said I'm Canadian Ukrainian, maybe that means I was born in Canada, but my parents are Ukrainian or my grandparents are. But Ukrainian Canadian, that's how I look at it.
But it's nice. It's nice when people, when people identify themselves like two different cultures, you already know how you can communicate with that person. Because when you said to me Canadian Ukrainian, I'm like, okay, now he's got Ukrainian roots. Does he speak Ukrainian? There's that comes in. I want to ask you another one. Does having multiple identities feel like superpower or contradiction?
I take the best from both worlds. That's how I say it. I think, especially now in this globalized world, it's obviously an advantage for sure. There's many Ukrainians I meet now who have moved here, and they struggle with English and stuff, and I think because they move, maybe they're much older, and you can feel that sometimes a language is very important. So having the ability to like move early and learn the language, and I was still learning English even before I moved, but I think that helps me, and just generally having this kind of way of understanding different cultures. Toronto is very multicultural. I think it's regarded as the most multicultural city in the world, and so yeah, you were exposed to different cultures, cuisines, ways of thinking. It's good.
Because I know a couple of days ago I met you and we went to, I said to you, listen, let's get some chicken or some donut, I don't care, kebab. No, you're like, no. Let's eat something new. And you went on your Google phone and you said, listen, let's get some Dominican food. And we actually went to eat something that I have never eaten in my life. But I can see that you love that different culture, which is very good. Which obviously comes up to the next question I want to ask you. Which culture shaped your values the most, the strongest? Was it Ukraine? Was it Canada? Was it Scotland? Was it UK now?
I think it's a hybrid, to be fair. I think there's some some people will say, "Oh, you're so Ukrainian the way you act," but then also I'm quite Western. You know, the way I'm kind of. I think like sometimes people from Ukraine are a bit more traditional, or from Eastern Europe as well. You know, you look at a lot of Eastern European countries, even Poland. Look at their president now. Bulgaria, and you know, many people they have some maybe very traditional values at the way they look at different communities, minorities, relationships. I have, I think, a bit of a mix. There is some of that tradition, but I'm also like very open-minded and also, you know, like kind of maybe I don't smile as much maybe as a British person, but yeah, like saying hello, how are you, all these things, you know, not just like straight to the point, which is yeah.
I want to go for a third topic now because you've mentioned the phrase Eastern Europe. I'm going to talk about Eastern Europeans in London, also for us Canada and Scotland. How has being Eastern European in London differentiate from being Eastern European in Canada or Scotland?
Yeah, so being Eastern European in Canada, I mean now I think it's quite similar, and I went to Canada a few times in the last, I would say, 10 years. And if I met someone who's kind of from the same region, you know, you'd be like, hey, bro, Eastern Europe or Slav, or, you know, if they're not Slav, you still say kind of, oh, bro. So I think there is that. And I have friends who are also back in Toronto, and even if they're like the Serbian ones, they'll be like, oh, Eastern Europeans, we're like similar. So there is that. Obviously, being in the UK, in Scotland, and London, there's, I'd say, much more Eastern Europeans, like Polish and Romanian communities are very huge in London and UK and Edinburgh, and they're also, a lot of them are kind of more recent immigrants, or, you know, like it's their parents who moved here or they moved here as kids. So because in Canada again you would have, but a lot of times sometimes the Polish could be like third generation. So here it's more visible, and yeah, I always felt like, I mean, in Edinburgh, if seeing, because there was not that many Ukrainians when I was kind of living there. When I saw a Polish person or Bulgarian, like in university, I was friends with Bulgarians. You know, I live with Bulgarians because they're like very similar culture, even the language very similar values. So it was like we got on really well. Same thing with Polish people I see, always got on really well with them. And they really have, you know, lived with Ukrainians now. A lot of Ukrainians have been welcomed by the Polish since the full-scale invasion, and even before that. Balkans as well, you know, Albanians, Serbians, yeah.
You know, you said about the word Eastern Europeans. I think Eastern Europeans became much more well known now, maybe in the last 10 years, or when the war started with Russia, because, you know, when every time you go to the news, the Europeans are always talking about Russians are maybe attacking, they're going to go further than Ukraine. And I think every time they see that, they see more like Estonia, because a lot of people didn't even know where Estonia was, you know, or like with Latvia, Lithuania is, you got the Moldova, you know, every time the Europeans or NATO was always showing the map. I think a lot of people now know, thinking, wow, Eastern Europe is not just Ukraine or Russia, there's actually other places involved. And this is where I want to ask you that further question is that in those 4 countries that you are, let's say, okay, aside from Ukraine, where did you feel you were more understood?
Oh, it's hard because obviously, you know, I was different ages, you know, and sometimes maybe I wasn't like looking for this philosophical understanding of me from other people. I don't know. What I'm gonna say is that I think now people know Ukraine much more, and obviously in London people know where Ukraine is. I think back then, even in Canada, some people like kind of thought Ukraine is like Russia, like, which is you know, quite bad, and or they're like, oh, somewhere there, you know, they were like, and but I think in the last, I would say even before the full-scale invasion, I would say in the last 10 years, Ukraine's become more understood here in the UK. And people, like I knew many people who went and traveled to Kiev. Obviously, we had the Euros in 2012. I think that really opened...
Yeah, floodgate.
Yeah, the floodgate, and people like, oh, Ukraine, oh, Poland, that's different countries. And oh, Russia is a very different place. And people came from Europe to go visit it, to watch football. And then since then as well. And I remember, I would say, yeah, in the last 8 years, you've seen more tourists come from UK to Ukraine, so they're understanding the different cities, even Odessa, Kiev, you know, Kharkiv, Lviv. So yeah, I feel obviously here, yeah.
I think people are also getting married to other nationalities
Yeah.
too. That's another exposure as well. I want to ask you this: what do Brits misunderstand about Eastern Europeans?
Um,
Have you come across this here in the UK? If not, I can just move on next.
I think there are some misunderstandings. The thing is with me is because the way I speak, I don't, luckily with my, maybe people think, oh, he's from North America, he's from
straight
Canada
away,
or something. So I don't get that. Like, oh, he's Eastern European guy. But I've heard stuff being said, being like, when I would express how Ukrainian I am, or they'd be like, oh, is it like really poor, or it's all mafia, or it's really corrupt. I mean, it's still corrupt. We're having issues right now, and on the local scene in Ukraine, unfortunately.
Cool. Survival struggle, reinventing yourself over and over again. My question to you is that, what almost broke you mentally in this city, in London?
Oh, look, I'm pretty privileged, I would say. I think I'm lucky the way I moved. I moved a bit older. I had a job, so I had some experience. So I just didn't come as like a kid with no money, I moved from Edinburgh to here. I actually had a job, and I kind of transferred offices with that job, so that was good. But then I did take some time off. I think COVID really hit me, and I think what kind of got me, it's just like it can get overwhelming. Like there's times when I felt like, oh, like how can you even survive in the city? It's just so overwhelming, so intense. And also, yeah, you really start, even if you have like a decent job, by average standards, you still start thinking about money. It's like, oh, like, you can run out of money and things like that. I think here money flows real quick. Also, if you like, you have some friends, you go out somewhere, this, that, and boom, you just like spend so much money for things in Edinburgh. They would be much more affordable, and I think things like that, just being being smartly budgeting your money, the sheer amount of people, how overwhelming it is. Also, like you gotta have your wits around yourself. Depends which neighborhoods you walk through.
Cool. I want to talk about, this is like the main topic here, is your music, rap, self-expression in different countries, and also your Eastern European too. Chokehold film and message. If you haven't seen it, you guys will see it on your screens on YouTube, definitely. When did music become part of your life? I think we've covered that already. Which version of you does music represent the most? I
mean, the Eastern European part, just like the song. Music, as I said, we covered it a bit. It's been always part of me, but I never like really decided to be an artist or until COVID. Until really COVID. I was thinking I was ready to record, but I would never really, I was kind of like trapped in my career and like trying to do the job and move up. I was also trying to get like wondering if I'm going to stay in the UK. If I have to stay longer to get like residency and things like that. So, focused on kind of a lot of admin, a lot of corporate, a lot of kind of life stuff. But that music was bubbling. And also in Edinburgh, didn't really feel that, there was some people doing music, and it was very like, that's it. We're the only ones doing it. And maybe like I would connect with other people who from like America, US, maybe even Eastern Europeans who want to do music. Maybe like we'll connect, but people come and go. And but when I moved to London, I was like, I'm gonna start releasing. I'm gonna give birth to questions for later. So and then that's what happened. And like for me, music is an outlet and something I want to use to like inspire people, and through my stories, but also stories I've seen people, my family, my friends. There's a lot. You can. There's many songs I've listened to that helped me in a hard time, or inspired me to do something, or just gave me that inspiration, motivation, even in the gym, or doing a report or something, or going and getting something done. And I want but there's always gaps, and I feel I can offer something that's missing, that those kind of stories, those words, and also kind of bringing in that Eastern European mentality, which we don't really have an artist that's representing Eastern Europe in kind of the English
In the UK. Yeah, no.
in a real way, not like in a very super stereotypical way.
But why? Can I ask you something? Because obviously you grew up majority of life in Canada and obviously a bit of now UK. But why focus on Eastern Europe? Why focus? Is it because you were born in Ukraine and you still have that fact that that Eastern European, or you got the roots, but you didn't see that in America or in Canada so much about Eastern. You didn't. I don't know. Maybe you didn't have that figure to look up to. Because what I hear from you, you've had a figure like Eminem.
Yeah.
Obviously, Eminem is white and he's obviously rapping. You said Bow Wow many times as well, because I know you like that kind of music. But why focus so much on Eastern European? Because some people might say to you, listen, you had a good life. You went to Canada.
Yeah.
You're taking on the Western values and qualities and so forth. Move on with your life. Why would you still kind of turn around and say, you know what? I'm not going to forget my roots, but I want to do English content, but still represent my culture to the West. And my question to you, because most Brits might turn around, or Canadians say, why do we even care about Eastern Europe, or why do we care about Ukraine? I know some people say, well, we do kind of care for Ukraine because of the war, but why should we care about Eastern Europe? Why does Eastern Europe matter for the Western world?
Yeah, look, like I started doing the music. For me, it was just to rap, to share my story, to share my struggle. It was a bit of therapy as well, and I wasn't necessarily rapping about Eastern European I was like even referencing my Toronto stuff, like Toronto upbringing, things I grew up on. But there was always, I was sprinkling in some like Ukrainian stuff, some Eastern European bits. I was always like a sprinkle of that reference, the style, and even the way I talk. I'm not necessarily fully Canadian and with the way I speak in my accent. And shout outs to Angel. He's a guy I used to work with. He lives in New York. And because we talked about music, and we worked at this company called Dice, like a music company, and then about like 2 years ago, he was like, man, you need to you constantly talk about this Eastern European this, that, you kind of reference those things, and I could see it from you. Why don't you just do like a freestyle repping your culture? So that was Eastern European one, and I kind of wrote that, and we did that song Cabo. Recorded it and edited it and directed it, and that was the beginning of this kind of Eastern European era as an artist, like something like I know this is what I want to represent. And I'm not gonna always just rap about being Eastern European. I'm gonna rap about like my own life relationships, but that lens is always there because that's how life is. We even like this year I joined these guys and we co-founded this MMA community for Eastern Europeans, like a run club, but doing MMA in like kind of free, accessible way, a couple of times a month, and it's called Viburnum. So again, and that's kind of, we decided let's, because we were training. So the guys I connected with, they were doing these sessions, and when I would go to them, it felt like those sessions I would train like back in Ukraine, because there's times I would go back to Ukraine, and that's where really I fell in love with like MMA and combat sports. And there's a really great gym called Girmias in Kiev, legendary, and I would go there. But there's great MMA gyms in London, but it's just that philosophy culture kind of that was missing in that, kind of the way you even talk. So these guys were doing that, and then we decided to start like a little community to have people who are from Ukraine, mostly, but Eastern Europe as well, come in, and we kind of train in that philosophy, the way we speak to each other, the way even the drills we do, things like that.
Yeah, cool. You made a film where you literally get choked in every scene. Why the symbolism? What is it? Why did you get choked in every? What were you trying to show?
Look, for that idea, shout out to Dan Lach. He's the director. He's a fellow Ukrainian as well. We got connected through family, really, about like a year and a half ago. And I actually already had Eastern European 1. And then we got connected. I was actually looking to do a video for Eastern European 2. And I just had a demo at that point. It was a more serious track. And I wanted to be like, let's look at like kind of the Eastern European experience in London. There's like struggles and there's opportunity and there's like longing for home. He also does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he knows I do MMA. Well, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now mostly. And he's like, man, I got an idea. So and then he's like, we it's going to be a great like a symbol we use from like the martial arts, but it's a symbol for like life and life essentially choking you out, different situations. And if you look at the music video, we sort of have like a politician, like a person meant to represent like an MP choking you out, some posh lady choking you out, society choking you out, some random people you don't even know who they're choking you out. You're just getting choked out because, like Eastern European, but even other immigrants and other people from different countries, there's struggles you go through and you feel you get choked out by society.
Yeah, because in that video, there's actually a phrase that it says it's not cheap to breathe in London.
Yeah.
What does it really mean? Is it because it's difficult in London? Not everyone can make it.
Yeah, I think London is a great city, has a lot of opportunity, but it's also hard. It's expensive. That's why it's not cheap. It's very expensive, and expensive even from like your own mental health. Relationships, you might have to sacrifice relationships to be here, to do things, to move around. Sometimes in London you live an hour away from your friends. You can't even see them that often. Like maybe in a small town or even back home where you live in the same neighborhood.
Because I want to say something, because you said something in that video. You said these words. You said, quote, "Sometimes you're the choker, sometimes the choke's on you." What does that really mean in real life?
Yeah, that was the captions you could see. We had them in the press release as well. So yeah, it means that, yeah, sometimes like you're getting choked out, and or like that person is choking you, right? But maybe the joke's on them because then you come out stronger.
Yeah, because listen, you showed in that video I've seen you showed immigrant-owned shops like pubs, gyms. Why highlight these spaces?
I mean, it's just for the aesthetic, it's
okay.
Eastern European too. We want it to be like, some people thought we shot that video in Eastern Europe. We just like, the team was amazing. Shout outs to, Dan, Mei Ling, the exec producer, the whole Spindle Films crew, Ilya, who's also a Ukrainian guy. He's the DOP, and they scouted. They wanted to kind of have that gritty aesthetic, but also kind of have that show like the different Eastern European hubs in the city.
Let me ask you this. 2 questions in one for you.
Are we finishing up? Yeah.
We're soon.
Yeah.
Was making the film healing or painful, and did the video represent a real period of your life?
No, look, it wasn't painful or anything like that. It was. I'm blessed to be able to do such a music video. I'm here. I'm not in Ukraine. There's peace here. Great opportunities, and to be able to do this, and even like the fact is I got connected to these people. They believed in the project, they loved the idea, and they wanted for this to come through to fruition. I'm blessed. It was amazing. It was like making like your little movie. It was, and I guess painful is like to see that there are people who are going through these kind of struggles, and these kind of like the metaphor can literally be felt by them. But I think all of us enjoyed taking part. And I think the video, some of it was like, there is parts of it, yeah, you do feel choked by these elements of society. Some of it was just, for any kind of immigrant, because we have all sorts, there's people who come here who are, they come and they just do, like they're trying to find a job, labor job. Then there's people who come in, they're just, from Eastern Europe, a lot of engineers come in, they actually have a pretty decent opportunities here, decent salaries. They still struggle in their own way, but it's different types of people. Yeah.
All right, let me ask. I'm gonna give a bit quick because obviously we're kind of short on time. When it comes to communities in Europe, have you ever felt more judged by your own people than by outsiders?
Ooh, at times, yeah. I mean, at the same time, I feel really supported, like, by the Ukrainian community. Like, I think in the past year, I've met so many different Ukrainians, because before I could never meet any. And I think in the past year or two, I would say since 2022, met so many. And I think a lot have been supportive. Yeah, you get some people who hate and this and that. I think I've had, like, actually when going back to Ukraine, there's times where I've felt like hate from people back there.
Okay. Another question for you. Why do Eastern Europeans abroad often stay divided?
Oh, I think there's different variety of reasons. Because I think there is a bit of like, sometimes people feel like they made it here, or they done, and they're like, they carved their little space, and they're like, oh, I don't want, like, I don't know. Sometimes people feel like, oh, like maybe if someone moved later, they feel like, oh, these people are not as civilized or something like that. I don't know. It's like jealousy, envy, trying to sustain something that they've maybe accumulated some status in here, and then they're worried of sharing that status with other Eastern Europeans. I don't know, man. So some Eastern Europeans are really connected, though. You know,
Ukraine versus Canada, biggest differences?
I mean, huge differences, very different countries, you know, mentality, you know, like the way people are, they're obviously a bit more, you know, there's a lot of niceties. Obviously, Canada is, you know, very by the book, although it has changed. It has changed, to be fair, in the last years. You know, I haven't lived there, but I know friends are kind of disappointed with some things. There's, you know, kind of life is a bit more, you know, there's not like war. There's or like extreme poverty. There are bad situations, things like that. The food is much better in Ukraine, though. Canada is, even though it's such a big place, it's just like America, a lot of processed stuff. And sometimes lack of that soul.
Let's jump on purpose, messages, and your future. Basically, what message do you want Eastern Europeans in London to hear from you?
I think it's time for us to, you know, be connected, to unite. Eastern Europe is, you know, we're different one way or another, but we're also very similar. You see, you know, Afro-Caribbean communities unite, you know, people from Africa with the Caribbeans, or people from different countries in Africa. They, you know, here they have their own like societies.
The diasporas and stuff,
yeah, South Asians, you know, East Asians and stuff. So I think there is room for us to learn from each other, help each other out, and then just kind of represent as a bigger unit. Because, you know, a lot of us have very similar, even like some of our food is similar, some of our languages are similar, customs, mentality,
Yeah, cultures and values, even sometimes religion as well. What do you want Brits to understand about people like yourself?
I want them to learn about Eastern Europeans, that, you know, we've had a tough life a lot. You know, we're in Europe. Yeah, Europe, people, you know, a lot of people are immigrating from other continents to Europe, but Eastern Europe has had a lot of dark past, a lot of wars, still wars going on now, a lot of conflicts. And by the same time, people are just like, they just get down to business and just do what they have to do. You know, there's not like kind of beating around the bush. It's just kind of tough people, direct, but also, you know, lovely people, very lovely people. You know, if you get to know Eastern Europeans, they're kind of open. They sometimes like really share their full heart.
I know. I can tell you when it comes to hospitality, when it comes to come to people's houses. What does identity mean to you now after 4 countries?
Identity is something that I think it's very important. It allows me to have some kind of a grounding, right? Even though, I've moved around, but I feel I have an identity. You know, I feel Ukraine comes first, but also some of these Western values. So, you know, I have a clear idea of who I am, I feel, by now. Yeah.
Of your videos and the music that you do, what's the core message behind your music?
The core message behind my music is that right now I want to really just open up the Eastern European world to the English-speaking world, and people to see it from someone who's kind of from there, but also speaks their language, and kind of show them the aesthetics in this kind of digestible, cool way, you know? Burna Boy, Wizkid opened up Africa to us in such a cool way that we never imagined. I want to do the same with Eastern Europe.
I want to ask you another question, is that where do you see yourself in 5 years? London, back home, or somewhere new?
I mean, I would love to go back home if there's no war or, you know, there's kind of like things subside and, you know, we can help rebuild. It's scary, you know, it's scary right now. There's people, boys like us, they're hiding because they don't want to go down the front lines, or some are going to the front lines, they're fighting, they're heroes, some are dying, some are, you know. But Ukraine would be great, but also, I mean, US is always that spot, you know, you wanna go and try out, especially with music. And
like, Kufael, thank you very much for this discussion with me. Where can our followers listen to you, to collaborate with you? Where can they find you? Which are you on social media?
I'm everywhere on social media. It's questions for later, and I'm everywhere on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, or X. Just questions for later. Q4L for short.
I'll leave everything in the description. My final question to you: if you could speak to a little Ukrainian kid who moved to Canada, what would you tell him now?
I would tell him, don't forget where you come from, but also appreciate the opportunity you have and make most of it. You know, and you become kind of a global citizen that way.
Thank you, Q4L. So I'm gonna finalize it for you. This wasn't about music or MMA. This was identity pressure, rebuilding yourself again and again in places that don't always understand you. Some people start from 0 once. He had to do it 4 times. If something hits you, good. If something makes you uncomfortable, even better. Identity Talks ain't here to entertain. We're here to challenge and wake people up. If you want to follow today's guest, you can find everywhere as question for later. So like he said, he's social media. If you felt this conversation, make sure you hit the subscribe button, drop a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for watching. Stay honest, stay questioning, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace.
Thank you.
Дякую. Слава Україні.
Героям слава.
Слава Україні.